I'm Adam Goods, a proud Utna man from South Australia, Sydney Swans player and chairman of the Indigenous Advisory Board. In my 33 years, I've been racially abused way too many times. In May this year at the MCG, I was racially abused by a 13-year-old girl. And it was time for me to stand up for who I am, a proud Indigenous man, and what I stand for. Racism has no place in our community, and it's up to all of us to stand up and say no to racism. Racism is a community issue, and it needs everyone to buy into that and stand up for those people who might not be able to stand up for themselves. Racism, it stops with me. The moment I was racially abused at the MCG during the Collingwood game, it was more shock. Shock because it's been probably 10 years since I've ever heard anything like that aimed towards me, which took me off guard. It took me off guard that it was whilst I was playing, because that was the last time I was racially abused. And what also caught me off guard was that it was such a young girl. The first time I looked back at her, I just was like, no, it couldn't have been. And then I looked back again, I was like, well, I'm guaranteed that was her. And it was just an instinctive thing. When I'm on that football, I play football instinctively. And it was an instinctive reaction to stand up and say no to racism, no matter where it comes from.
You're not going to believe this, I had binoculars on it. And I couldn't believe that I was sitting in the Ponsford stand on Indigenous round in 2013, and I saw Adam Goods pointing his finger to somebody in the crowd. I thought, my God, please don't tell me, don't tell me. And I remember telling my good friend Louis next to me, I think something terrible has just happened.
One of the most courageous things to be able to do, to be able to stand up and just say, no, that's not right, I don't like it, we need to put a stop to that. Definitely one of the best things I've seen.
A lot of people have asked me why is ape so offensive. I think if you ask any non-Indigenous person that question, they might ponder what it does mean. I think for me, it's a derogative term, a racist slur that was also used to say that we're no smarter than monkeys, we're not human. If this was a word that I'd never heard before racially, then maybe it wouldn't cut deep, but after being educated, through media outlets, through reading books, I know exactly what the term ape means and how it's used, and unfortunately it is a word that really cuts us people deep, and it definitely cut me deep that night.
Some people perceive that were non-Indigenous, that he was a bit thin-skinned because he got called an ape, and what's the difference between being called an ape or a dog or a monkey or whatever. And I explained to him about how the word came about and how it was used in a derogatory sense to say that Indigenous or black people came from apes, that we were the missing link, and it was very upsetting to people, and they didn't understand that.
It'd be a different story if people were direct and came out and said, listen up, you're mob or whatever you are. But it seems to me to be that people have learnt some things, and maybe that isn't necessarily a good thing, but it becomes more latent rather than overt.
The difference in today's society is that people actually don't come out and say it anymore, but they still think it. So I think if we can decrease the majority of racism in society, we're doing a good thing and make it a minority. And I think that's sort of the way I hope that we're heading, and I think in my lifetime I've seen it improve.
Where are we today on the subject of racism? Yes, we are getting somewhere, but we've got a long way to go, and we can't forget that, because if we do, it's just going to rear its ugly head year after year.
You know, you come to the footy to have a good time. You know, who cares if someone calls someone an ape? You know, the guy's making $1 million. If he can't have thick skin and can't take a bit of abuse, don't play the game. Don't take home the big money. You know, it's a disgrace. You know, it wasn't a racist remark. You know, ape is not a racist remark. You know, it's just overkill.
I think Indigenous people in our country are and have been discriminated against for a long time, and I'm really glad that Adam stood up to it all.
Do you understand, or what's your take on why he found that word so offensive, being called an ape?
I think you'd have to probably be black before you could answer that, really.
Yes. I was disgusted and quite saddened, I think, not only for Goods but for the girl herself, that she's been brought up in an environment where you can say things like that and not actually have to think about the impact and where it comes from.
Well, racism isn't something that you're born with, it's something that you learned, it's something that you're conditioned with, and I think over periods of generations it's handed down to you, racism, and sometimes young kids don't realise that they're being racist.
Families have got to start educating children in the homes. You don't see at school 5, 6-year-old kids not befriend someone because they're a different colour or a different race. They love each other.
The more we're educated on it, the more people will understand it. And as I said before, it comes from, you know, junior football clubs all the way through to, you know, the elite level. And I think there really needs to be, you know, some sort of education process at all those different sort of levels of AFL.
Indigenous studies isn't taught at school. So, you know, to say every person in Australia knows about the traditional people of this land, well, they don't. And maybe if they did, and through education, we will have a better understanding, and that ignorance wouldn't be there.
Aboriginal Australia belongs to everybody because it's indigenous to Australia. So Aboriginal culture, whether you're white, black or brindle, belongs to you and you should know more about it. People could rattle off 5 American Indian tribes at the drop of a hat, but when you ask them to name 5 Koori tribes, they couldn't do it.
The road ahead looks straight and clear and easy and everywhere else, but you travel on it and there are bumps all over the place. And that's the type of thing, I think. So these experiences, we hope, count for something. So it does make a difference. If we learn some things, and then we can grow from that and, you know, make what we all hope will be a better place for your kids, my kids, and my grandkids. And I've got 6 great grandkids, so I want to make sure that they're right, you know.